Topsnap podcast. Thank you for joining us. It's the episode 59, Dr. DeWitt. This is Dr. John DeWitt, and he's been my doctor for a couple of years through Dr. Bergman and Bergman Chiropractic, which was formerly from across the street in Huntington Beach at, who knows what the name of the chiropractic place was, but I went there. That's where I learned Graham Chiropractic.
There you go.
Graham Chiropractic, and I've been seeing Dr. Bergman and Dr. Bergman's Chiropractic for probably 15, 16, 17, 18 years, who knows, forever. And the last several years, Dr. DeWitt has been working on me as Dr. Bergman has grown his brand. And I am very intrigued with this gentleman because he's a former football player and a big, smart guy. And I just wanted to get into his head because you wrote, I believe, a book about the eyesight.
I wrote 3 books, actually. One was You Don't Need Your Glasses or Contacts. The other was 20 Surprising Foods for Clearer Vision. And the last one was Chiropractic Care and Clearer Vision, or something about that. And then I wrote one about concussion, actually 2 about concussions, one for athletes like rugby players, football players, things like that. And then I also wrote one for equestrians because they have a high incident of concussions.
Really? Equestrian, running the
horse riding, yeah.
Yeah, equine, right? The equine
yes.
realm?
Something like that, yes.
Wow. So, as I'm running around trying to get all the production set up to go, and again,
What'd you do? Just hop up.
I'm not a Jamie.
Run around.
I need a Jamie. I'm gonna splice that up a little bit.
Oh, I figured.
We're right back in. I normally don't do anything like that, but
good.
since it's all kind of messed up. So you're saying, what book was that again?
Well, we got the You Don't Need Your Glasses or Contacts. That's based on the Bates method, which he was an ophthalmologist back in the late 1800s. And I personally did that on myself because I wore glasses since the 8th grade and did it once. Well, I probably... All right, I'll say I did it a week, but I actually only did it once. But literally didn't need to wear my glasses for like 3 years after I did like one of his exercises.
Okay, so I have some questions, and I'm gonna hook you up a little bit here.
Hook me up a little bit so you can hear me. Too far, too close, too something.
Closer to you so that you can enjoy it, and then
and then
falling on your lap so much. Sorry, folks. This is all about the evolution. I call it the evolution of a podcast, Doc. Because do you like to be called Doc at all? Is that
whatever? It's all good.
John, what do you go by normally? What do you prefer?
Doc's fine.
Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing I wanted to ask you once we get past this thing. So about the eyesight, because lately my eyes are I feel like they're on a drastic decline as far as my ability to see, especially when it gets dark. Now, when I apply light, like a really nice bright light to an area, like let's just say reading or something that has, a lot of companies do, like they engrave out so there's like an indentation in the surface to reflect whatever the letter or number it's representing, or they'll put a highlight or a bump on it and maybe put a little bit of paint, like these keys or something.
Right.
I notice in low light situations, it's very, very hard to read. And it's just, my eyes are straining. I do have prescription glasses that I got about a year and a half ago, 2 years.
Sacrilege.
I know, but I need to read, and it gets to the point where I'm trying to read, I'm focusing, and it's just so exhausting. And as soon as I throw those little spectacles, my readers,
half glasses. Oh my goodness.
No,
I'm 100 years old. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I look like Grandpa. I'm trying to find them right now.
See, now you can't even see where they are.
Now I can't even find my glasses. But it just
one of the things for night vision, if you see like halos around lights in the dark, or it's just harder to see in low light situations, you need to eat more beta carotene.
Okay.
So that's going to be like obviously carrots. Everybody talks about carrots.
Yeah.
But carrots, just basically more vegetables. Vegetables are key.
Okay, now how do I phrase this? Okay, so my dad has glaucoma, high pressure in his optic.
In his eyes, blueberries are good for that.
Okay, and then he eats a shitload of those, and he takes these high pressure drops. They're supposed to relieve the pressure in the eye or something. He makes sure he's very diligent about that, and he tells me that I need to get my eyes checked out again, make sure that it's not a hereditary condition. Is it? Okay, this is not a hereditary. This is an environmental condition.
Well, that's kind of what we talk about a lot in the office. There's genetics, but just because somebody in your family had this particular condition doesn't mean you're guaranteed to have it, because there's also a level below genetics, or actually above it, called epigenetics, which is the expression of the genes. So if you're, say your dad was super unhealthy and never exercised and things like that, then that could have led to his vision issues. But if you're super healthy and working out all the time and eating lots of vegetables and things like that, the chances of you having those similar health issues is dramatically less.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. See that? So now, first, how do I get the book?
And actually, you can go to drjohndewhitt.com. You
Okay.
get drjohndewhitt.com, and it has everything I've ever done. It's got like 12 different videos, books, supplements, all kinds of stuff.
Okay, so you got into being a doctor, and this is what I was writing in my book. Like this morning, I got up and I was like, okay, Dr. DeWitt, he's in football. Was your first interest football? What was your first interest growing up as a kid, or growing up to make you, like, obviously, were you physical the whole time, or did you grow up kind of like more of a brainiac and then get into your physicality as you grew bigger?
Yeah, that was kind of interesting because my dad was, he's a little guy. He's about 5'10" and weighs, he said when he was in high school he weighed about 135 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And his dad was a huge football fan, and so he kind of forced him to play football, and he played nose guard at 135.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he quit the team when he was a junior in high school, and it was a huge thing, and his whole life was ruined because he did that. So he wanted me to play football, but I didn't play. I had one practice when I was in the second grade. I still can't believe they had kids playing in the second grade. And I was going out at the boys club, and I dropped my mouthpiece in the dirt, and I didn't know I could rinse it off or anything, so I just picked it up and put it back in my mouth with all the dirt on it and stuff. And I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. And so I told them I wanted to spend time with my friends instead of practicing, and so I quit until the sixth grade because my parents were like, you know, if you're going to be going to junior high, we had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade was junior high out in Arkansas. And he's like, you're going to junior high, you should probably play football because it'll be good for your confidence or making you popular or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right. And so me and my buddy, he's about 6'9", but he was not that tall back then. He and I played football, and it was fun. And then 7th grade, it's really interesting when you're starting out because you don't know, and the coaches don't know where they should put you. So I played fullback, I played backup quarterback, I played defensive end, I played tight end, I played all these different positions, and then finally I ended up being a backup quarterback and a defensive end. And I mean, it was fun, but it was just kind of fun for me. I was just because I grew taller than most of the guys, you know, because I was probably 6'4" when I was probably 13, 14.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I wasn't very big. I was just really tall.
Just tall. Well, yeah, you had to fill into it, right?
And so I was playing in junior high, and our crosstown rivals were the Ramsey Rams. I remember we were the Chaffin Cougars, and they were the Ramsey Rams. And they had two guys on their team that were just crazy, nuts, hardcore football, like just insane. And when we got to high school, we all ended up, all the guys were on the same team. And so I was like, all right. And so one was Shannon Wright was his name. And he was a speed roller skater, and he had huge, strong legs. The other guy was Brett Billings. He was one of these guys like Shaq that they couldn't find a helmet to fit his head. It was so big, literally. And so he had this huge head, and he was a fullback and a linebacker. They were both running backs and linebackers, and he was a big-chested guy. And they came up to me when they first met me when we were in high school, and they were like, dude, we used to be scared to death of you. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Why? I'm like, and they were like, because you were just a beast. And I was like, okay, I was just doing what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I kind of turned into their project, and they're like, we're going to turn you into a beast. I was like, all right. And so we started going to the gym and working out all the time, and it was pretty cool. Shannon ended up signing with the University of Arkansas. He signed early and got first team all freshman Southwestern Conference back then. It was the captain of the Cotton Bowl team as a freshman, which was nuts. And we ended up winning the state championship my senior year. We won 7-6, which was a very sad, depressing score for anybody watching, but it was fun for me though.
Yeah.
But see, I didn't think I was ever going to play football after that. So I was super dedicated, and they got me all fired up, and I wasn't getting any offers from anybody. I had a weird thing happen when I was a junior, where I was getting ready to try to take the spot from Art Gramling, was the guy that was the starting defensive end ahead of me. And I woke up one morning, and after training camp, after the first day of practice and training camp, which they don't even do 2-a-days anymore. I can't believe that. That's. I mean, it wasn't fun, but it's just like a rite of passage. But
yeah.
Anyway, so I got up and I went to the bathroom like guys do in the morning, and it was straight grape Kool-Aid coming out. I'm like, whoa, what? And I mean, I didn't know what to do, and so I went to the training room, went to practice that day, told the trainer. And he was like, well, let's see how dark it is. And he's like, whenever you need to go, then, just let me know. I was like, all right. I was like, I can go right now if you want. So we go in the locker room, and he's standing next to me. It was so funny because it comes out and still grape Kool-Aid. And he literally took a step back and was like, whoa. that's really dark. And so what had happened is I had so much blood in my urine for some reason that it had turned it purple. And so that pretty much scratched the first month of that season, because I was going through all these different tests and found out that I had a birth defect where one of my kidneys was 70% smaller than the other one. And something must have happened in that. 70%. So they were basically saying, if you get hit in your good kidney, you can't live on the other one. And so I had to wear this big neoprene belt, like 6-inch wide belt around my waist that had this big cup that covered my kidney supposedly. And when you're playing in Arkansas and it's 115 degrees, that's not fun. And so that was after a series of conversations where my dad was just in tears and said, you can't play football anymore.
Well, so you're literally and figuratively speaking, you are playing with a handicap, because now you have this plastic thing over you that's inhibiting movement probably a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And it would probably adding additional heat stress to you.
Mm-hmm. It was awful. But
and forgive me if I rewind in my head, because I'm sitting running around. You were born and raised in Arkansas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was funny because
that's Bill Clinton's state, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, that's old. All right.
That's a whole thing. But it was really interesting because before they discovered the whole rubber band thing or whatever I could wear around my waist. The first couple of doctors said, you can't play football anymore because it's too risky.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. My reaction, I was totally fine with that. I was like, okay, I'll just do school and that's fine. My dad was like, no, he was,
some Station 4 just drove by. Something's going on. They never come by.
But yeah, he was really upset. And so he just kept asking friends that he knew that were medical doctors, and found a urologist that he went to school with that finally said, okay, yeah, no, you can play. Just wear this pad. And I was like, oh, okay, I play, don't play. I was just kind of like either way. Mm-hmm. And so when I played the state championship game, I led the team in tackles that game, and it was so funny because
real quick, state championship with who?
For Arkansas, with the it was for the state of Arkansas with Southside was our. We were Southside, and the team we played was the crosstown rival Northside.
Northside,
ironically, and they'd won the year.
And
before.
what city was that in?
Fort Smith.
Fort Smith.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, so I was playing that game, and as soon as that game was over, I literally thought I was never going to play football again. So I just took my pads off, and that was it. And it was really interesting because I started getting phone calls from like Ouachita Baptist and other little smaller schools that wanted me to play, and I just I didn't really want to. I was like, I don't want to go to a small school and play. I mean, I'm not a football guy really. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that my best friend at the time, his name's Jay Schultens, his sister Wendy was an All-American basketball and volleyball player at Vanderbilt. And so I was like, well, I'll apply to Vanderbilt. You know, I applied to Vanderbilt, SMU, Tulsa, different schools around the area. And I ended up getting into Vanderbilt based on my academics, not because of my football stuff. And they're in the SEC. They're like the Ivy League of the SEC. And I went there, and this was back when they had VHS tapes. They didn't have DVDs and all that.
Of course.
And they didn't have any of these services they have now. Like, they have a whole online service.
You say then. Are we about the same age?
I don't know. I'm 47.
Okay, I just turned 46.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So
wow, that's awesome.
So anyway, this was my favorite thing ever because I was very grew up in the Episcopal Church. And then the Methodist church in the area had a better youth program and had all the fun ski trips and stuff. So I just started going to the Methodist church, and my parents were fine with it either way. And so I really got into, anytime I wanted something, I would walk down at the end of the service to the altar and kneel down there because I felt like it was like an express line to God. And if you wanted something, and back then as a kid, I'd be like, I want to be able to bench press 200 pounds, 300 pounds. I want to run a 740 or whatever. But I always just felt like that really recharged my batteries and helped me stay focused, and I knew that it was going to happen. So anyway, go to Vanderbilt, show him my tape, the personnel guy, and I remember he had a really weird perm. But anyway, I'm sitting there with my dad, and the guy's just like, you know what, I'm going to show you some players that we have on the team. And I'm like, he pulled up some players, and we're watching them. I'm like, okay. And he literally is just like, I'm just telling you right now, you're too small and too slow to play in the SEC. And I was like, okay. And we walk out, and I said, can I walk on to the team at least? You know, you don't have to give me a scholarship. I'll just walk on and get a scholarship on my own. And he was like, yeah, you can do that, but I just don't think you have a chance. I was like, okay. And so I'm walking out, and my dad is just like, I'm so sorry, you know, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm like, oh, no, he doesn't even know what he just did. He just doubted that I can do this. I'm like, there's no question this is going to happen. And So that's when I really got focused at church and was praying for it, working out like a crazy man all the time. And my first semester at Vanderbilt, I wouldn't even drink soda. I wouldn't do anything that was anti getting to my goal. I was drinking water all the time. Unfortunately, I didn't really go to class as much as I should have because I was focused on school or on football. And after every practice, I would ask the coaches if I had a scholarship yet, and they'd be like, "No, not yet. You're doing fine. It's not yet, not yet." And at the end of that season, we had the meetings with the coaches, and they were like, "Okay, well, here's the deal. As far as we're concerned, you're on full scholarship now." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And it was one of those things where I had owned it so much that it was one of those, well, what took you so long kind of a thing, because it's one of those manifestation things where you don't just manifest it and just wait for it to happen. You bust your tail and work really hard, and then that's how it happens.
So you take the woo-woo aspect and you put it to this other aspect, which is like this very hardcore work ethic, and culminate it to be something that's both, because some people put too many eggs in the basket of woo-woo.
Yeah.
Like, if I think about it, it's going to come. Or I'm only going to work hard, but the negative attitude and everything else, they almost start to disrupt their own flow.
Exactly. And it was cool because Tom Vincent was a defense.
You don't mind if I...
No, go ahead. I know, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It's just a directional mic. They're so weird.
So he was a offensive lineman, I think, on the team, and he gave me the suggestion of having the coach write my parents a letter and giving it to him for Christmas, because it was November when he told me that. And so he wrote a letter out. It was, Watson Brown was the coach at the time, and I still remember it said, "Congratulations to you. John has earned a full scholarship to Vanderbilt. We thank the world of him. You must be very proud," or something like that. And so I put that in an envelope and I put it under the Christmas tree. And I was not known for being able to keep secrets at all. And so I didn't tell anybody. My sister couldn't believe it.
Do you think that was, you weren't able to keep secrets, but now you're in this point where you've kind of sacrificed everything in your life for this goal, and you're getting to this goal, and now you cherish it so much that now it's another goal that you were able to accomplish along the way. You're able to now keep a secret, I would assume, for something you were never able to because this was that important.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's really funny because along the way, while I was working, in the off season before I went to Vanderbilt, my dad had kind of given into the fact that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. He's like, "Well, I guess you're just not going to get a scholarship. Focus on your school." And that he didn't realize, but that was even feeding the fire even more. I'm like, "Oh my God, I got doubters all over the place. This is going to be so sweet." And so they opened the letter, and Christmas was
awesome.
pretty much. Christmas was pretty much over at that point. Dad started bawling. My mom was bawling. He got on the phone and was just interrupting everybody's Christmas morning, calling all his friends and being like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what John gave us for Christmas." And it was awesome. But then I also learned, I still get chills thinking about it, but then I also learned another lesson, because if you have this big goal and you focus your whole life on it and you get it, but then you don't have another goal after that, there's a huge letdown. And I wasn't prepared for that, had no idea. And so I show up, I'm the starting defensive end, and we're playing SMU. They had just gotten off the death penalty with the NCAA and stuff. And so we go there, and it was so humid, so foggy, it was awful. And I did okay, but
humid and foggy?
Yeah, it was awful.
Oh, Christ, I don't think I've ever been a part of that.
It was hard to breathe.
Oh, my God.
It's Texas for you. But I just played terribly, and it was so weird because all of a sudden the pressure that I used before that helped me stay focused and get what I wanted, once I got it, all that pressure all of a sudden seemed like a big expectation, because nobody thought I could do it before, and now they were expecting me to do it, and it was like, and so that whole season was kind of me figuring out what to do after, and I didn't.
So more than anything, it was a psyche thing.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
So is this why, and I'm not going to try to divert or derail because I've been known to go down rabbit holes, but I try to make associations with people because a lot of people I talk to aren't into football.
Right.
But there's associations on all these realms, business and football and MMA and boxing and just whatever. It could be ice skating and soccer for the World Cup that just ended. And people get into this realm, like you said, you weren't prepared for it. Went flip-flop. It went from no one is even gonna, there's no expectation because they don't even expect you to make it there.
Right.
Once you share, divulge, and this information comes out, then it goes beyond congratulations, we'll see what you can do. Oh shit, well now you made it. Now you have to make these goals, and now they're already planning so far ahead. Like you said, you didn't even plan for that next step after. You're like, oh my God, everyone's already got their head.
Right.
Their heads are 2 steps ahead of you for what you want.
Yep.
I would imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so then, and I was known for being the lightest defensive end in the SEC, which is very intimidating in the program. I'm like, do you really have to write that in there? That's not very intimidating, because I was 6'4", probably 245, and
which is still a big man.
yeah,
but that's just not
when
big
you're
for
going
defense.
against like Anton Davis for University of Tennessee, he was 6'5", 6'6", about 360.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I was
what do you do
and I
then?
used to get double teamed all the time by him because they had me playing nose guard as well, ironically. So anyway, the first season I just was kind of getting my bearings, trying to figure out how to, and it was okay. And because of my story, every single game, regardless of how I played, the newspaper would find a picture to take of me in the game and have it in the paper. So that added more pressure, because I'm like, I'm in the paper again, and okay. And I mean, it was exciting, but it was just like in the back of my head, I'm like, you got to do something about this. And so then my second season that I actually played, I did better, got second team all conference and stuff like that. So it was, so that was good. But then during that season, my friend Shannon out at the University of Arkansas committed suicide. And he was like,
No, this is the original guy that said he used to be scared of you.
yeah. And he and I were really good buddies, and he had a lot of struggles emotionally and stuff. But during the off season, what people don't understand is, well, at least for me, is the season ends, you have a few weeks to rest, and then you start training for the next season and during the off season. So you're training, and then there's a certain point during the off season when you haven't hit anybody in a while, and you start wondering if you can still do it. And you can't really remember. You're like, I think, yeah. And so I would call him up and be like, I'm feeling kind of funky again. He's like, man, you know what to do, just do it. And that was always his, ironically, that's my last name, ironically. But
oh, wow, that's good.
But he would just say that, and it was just, I just needed him with the reassurances. Yeah. And then when he was gone, it was just
a void.
It was so sad. I was in class at Vandy, and one of the coaches came to get me out of class, and that never happens. And so I'm like, what's going on? What happened? And they took me to the head coach's office, and they said, we have your dad on the phone. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on? And he was like, I just wanted to let you know before it's on TV, but Shannon died. And I was just like, oh, okay. And it was so interesting because I had just finished watching Pumping Iron with Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno and stuff. Mm-hmm. And when Arnold's dad died, he didn't go to the funeral because he was like, I have things to do. He's dead. He's gone. That's just a show. I'm not going to do that. And so at first I told my dad I wasn't going to go to the funeral. And the head coach was like, and this was Coach Jared DiNardo at this point, different coach.
Do you think that when you watch something like the Arnold Schwarzenegger and you hear that these influential thoughts come in to make you progressively think that? Not saying that it's like mind control by any means. Obviously you decipher what comes into your head, and then you lay out your program. But being such a young mind, do you think that really turned you to kind of want to make that decision not to go to that?
I think it was just a justification. I mean, it's like, hey, I don't really. It was one of those, hey, I like Arnold, and he didn't go, so maybe I don't have to go.
Yeah.
Because I knew deep down it wouldn't be fun regardless. But eventually I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go. And I went, and it was crazy because they bused students from the University of Arkansas to Fort Smith, my hometown. We went to this church that had 2 different levels, and I think there were 3 or 4, maybe 6,000 people at his funeral. And it was just really an interesting experience because it was an open casket.
Oh, wow.
And so you walk down, and I see him, and it was there were so many memories with him that it would be like I'd be laughing, and then I'd be crying, and I'd be laughing, and I'd be crying. And then I went and sat like in the second row, and I would watch all the people walk by, and it was just such a ironic, I don't know, it was so weird and surreal because I knew all the girls that he'd hooked up with, and so they'd walk by, and I'd be like, yep, hooked up with you, yep, hooked up with you, and I'd just be like, oh, I know stories about you.
Yes.
It was just so funny.
And it's you were aware of my nephew passing in that car accident, mm-hmm. and I've talked about this several times on the podcast where you have to find the humor in tragedy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can take you down a very, very dark place, and you can't get out.
That's true. It's true, and it was just. So it was such a really interesting experience. I was so glad I went. I mean, it was really sad because he was dating a girl at the time, and he had asked her to marry him, and she said yes, but then she ended up saying no later and gave the ring back, and she felt like it was all her fault.
Oh yeah, because
so as soon as I got to the church, she comes running out when she sees me and gives me a big hug and is bawling, and I'm just like, yeah. And then went to his grandparents' house, and his poor grandfather, he was totally on board with me being the project, and I was going to be the big successful football beast and all this stuff. And Shannon used to get really mad because I used to be able to beat him in the 40-yard dash, and he hated that. And so he'd go out there and run. We'd run like, his whole thing was, if it's crazy in the middle of the night and it's snowing, I'm going to go running because nobody else is. I'd be like, oh, okay. But anyway, I went to see his grandparents, and his grandfather literally just fell on the floor bawling at my feet, and it was.
And do you think that's because you bring such a significant resolution to the whole thing that's going on? I mean, because you're close, you represent a lot of what he represented in, as far as the figure of the football player, of the person, the student, the human being, the man. Like,
yeah.
There's a lot of representation, probably closely related.
Very,
right?
very much so. And I'm still in touch with Shannon's mom, and I remember when I went to his house that day, I sat in the chair, the little recliner that he always used to sit in, and his mom sat on the arm of the chair and sat there and was twisting I had curly hair at the time. She was twisting, because she used to do that to Shannon all the time, so she was doing that to me. And I was just, it was a really weird experience. But anyway, so then
yeah, that's heavy right there.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
Because now you're sitting there going, wow, you're part of this thing that she's reliving, this comforting feeling.
And anything that would make her feel better. And she's a nurse too. Well, she was. I'm not sure exactly what she does now.
So, so it's not like this is something new that she had to go through, as far as like grieving and getting attached to people passing. But this is her own son, and now this is
right. And I mean, it was pretty intense. So that was then, and then I finished out. We never had a winning season at Vanderbilt. My first 2 seasons, we won 2 games in 2 seasons, which was a lot of fun. But then the scouts from different NFL, the NFL scouts come out and run people and do drills and stuff. And so we had the scout for the 49ers came out, but it was raining that day. So this was a really interesting situation too. So he only had that day to be there to watch people run. And so he had there were, I think, 3 or 4 of us out there. And we went to the basketball court and ran 40s diagonally across the basketball court because it was raining outside, which I thought was really interesting. And because of that, we're all sitting there during the draft. We're all excited, watching the draft. First day, obviously, didn't get called or anything. This was back when, and I was so mad because they used to have 13 rounds in the draft. Now they only have 7. And so they just cut it back from 13 to 7.
How long did that take?
For them to decide to do that?
No, I'm saying how long that's a lot of rounds, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, they only have the first couple of rounds on TV, and the rest of it they would just call you or something. But I was so bummed because they just done that. First day, nobody called me. Second day, we're sitting there watching, and my dad, I think my mom and dad both left to go do something, thinking that might be a lucky thing, and if they weren't there, somebody might call.
So the 49ers call, and then and they're not offering a contract, but it's just come out 3 days.
Exactly. So they're like, we're going to fly you out and to Santa Clara, I think is where it was. And I was like, okay. And the only NFL football I ever watched was Dallas, because I was in Arkansas and Dallas was the closest team. So I didn't know anything about any other teams really. And so I remember getting a cab to the training facility, and there was this white-haired guy jogging outside, and so I'm walking in, and he opens the door for me. I'm like, oh, hey, okay, and walk in. No idea that was Coach Seifert, the head coach. I didn't even know it. And so anyway, so I get there, and it was so crazy because I literally remember sitting in front of my locker. There's a piece of white tape above the locker that had my name on it, and there's 49er helmets everywhere around me. And one of my teammates, Alan Young, that was a whole nother story. I mean, this was crazy. So Alan was an amazing player, super smart guy. He got his undergrad from Vanderbilt in 3 years, and then got his business degree in 2 years, and had it all paid for with football because he just had a scholarship. And he had signed with the 49ers, but he also had started a sports agency representing players, and I'd signed with him because I was like, I don't know anybody else, so I'll sign with you. And I was like, what happens if we're on the same team and we're competing basically for the same job? And he's like, oh, that won't happen. Of course that happened. So I'm in.
Yeah, right when you say that won't happen, exactly.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there, but it was just so weird because I'm sitting in my locker, I'm looking, and I go out to practice. We do some like walkthrough stuff. We have helmets on, and but back then it was crazy. Even if you just had helmets on, you're pretty much going full speed because you're out there to get a job and you're just smashing helmets, and
That's why they say that helmets are actually more detrimental to football players than not having helmets because your willingness to go full bore head on to another human being.
Yep.
Whereas if you had it like a rugby, they don't do that.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, I was a little disappointed because the defensive line coach came up to me and he's like, how much do you weigh? I thought you weighed like 270 or something. I was like, no. And so I'm like, well, that's not good. He already thinks I'm too small. I'm like, that's a bummer.
That's so crazy.
But I remember sitting in front of my locker, and I made the conscious decision. I'm like, okay, I have two choices. You can try really hard, or you can just enjoy your time here and meet as many of the guys as you can and think it's fun, and then enjoy San Francisco and then go home. And unfortunately, I chose the easier of the two, and so I met Bryant Young. It was his first year, everything. Jerry Rice, super cool guy.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And he had a little short trainer that used to go around with him everywhere and just train. He did crazy training.
He's one of my favorite players ever.
Yeah, Dana Stubblefield was there. We used to call him Stubby. He was a real nice guy. Who else was there? Anyway, so
wow, superstars.
Yeah, and it was just really cool. And so I'm like, this is great. And then the way it works is you get a round trip ticket when they first fly you out there, and basically they're like, if you don't hear from us, you just fly home.
Yeah,
we're not going to talk to you. You just leave. I'm like, okay, that's nice.
So hold on, let me get this straight. So you fly out to you go to wherever there's
Santa Clara. Yep.
You go to the training facility.
Yep.
And you just hang out.
You go there. You go through practices.
Okay. And you do
multiple,
the thing.
Yeah, and then if they'll say, okay, say that was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they'll be like, Sunday, you can go have fun, whatever. If you hear from us, great. And if you don't, just make sure you get to the airport. Yeah. And so I did that, went home, and was like, all right, well, now what am I going to do? And so I was an assistant coach for my high school football team, and that was fun. But that's when I realized that I wasn't done playing football. I would get so fired up before games, and I would get so frustrated with the kids that were just doing it for fun. And I was just like, oh my, I gotta do something. So I also worked as a youth counselor at the Methodist Church, and then so I was helping with the kids at the church, which was good, and did ski trips and stuff. And I'd signed up for something called a scout camp, where you pay $100 and you go run in front of scouts from the CFL, the NFL, or they didn't have the XFL.
You said when you went back home, you went back home to Arkansas, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lived with my folks.
Okay.
And so I paid the $100 for that scout camp, and before the scout camp was the ski trip for the church group. So we went on the ski trip, and at the end of every ski trip, it gets really emotional. Everybody's so appreciative, and you've been together, you've heard stories, everybody cries and all that stuff. And so I was up there, and I was just telling everybody how appreciative I was, and I enjoyed the support of everybody because they knew where I was going like the next week to run for the scouts. And I mean, it was just so awesome. I remember so many of the guys jumping up and like giving me a hug and stuff. It was awesome. And so once again, this was in Plano, Texas. Flew out there. It's so many weird things. So I'm at the hotel, and all of a sudden they call all the rooms, tell everybody to come down to the lobby in the hotel because there's a tornado in the area. And so there's a tornado in the area. We're all downstairs in the lobby, and I can tell who's probably going to run for the thing and who's just regular.
Run for the
scout camp.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Not the storm camp. But I mean, they're literally. I remember the videos. They had hail that was so big it was busting out windows of cars and stuff. It was huge.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Are we still doing this in the morning or what?" And so they said, "Yeah, we're still doing it." So we went out to this facility that had AstroTurf, luckily. And it was wet, but you could still run on it. And they had you run through these drills, and there was only one NFL scout there. It was from the Houston Oilers. His name was Rich Sneed. And I'd gotten myself up to about 260 at that point. And so I'm running drills.
Which is now the Tennessee Titans?
Tennessee Titans, yeah.
That's so weird, that whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's there. I didn't have an agent. And he's like, so do you really weigh 260? And I'm like, yeah. In the back of my head, I'm like, do not put me on a scale right now. And anyway, he said, well, we're going to have you do some other drills after we're all done here. I'm like, okay, cool. So start doing other drills for him and stuff, and he was, evidently impressed or whatever. And he's like, all right, well, we're going to decide what we're going to do. You'll hear back from us in a couple days. I was like, all right. And so I go home back to my folks' place in Fort Smith, and I'm sitting there, and phone rings, and he's like, all right, well, here's the deal. We're going to offer you the minimum contract. It's $103,000. And am I still in the thing?
Yeah.
Okay. It's $103,000. I think it was $106, something like that, $1,000. And we're excited to have you, and you need to get an agent. I was like, okay. And so they sent me the contract in the mail, and it was like, instead of like duplicate or like one copy, there were like 7 copies. I have it framed back home. It was hilarious. But so that was the beginning, and I went to Houston, and that was when I refocused again, just like I did with Vanderbilt. And it was a great experience. Got to meet a lot of really cool guys, and then they ended up sending me to NFL Europe to play in Scotland, where we won the World League Championship.
You guys did win that?
Yeah, we won that, so that was cool. And then during the next 11 years, I would reconnect with different guys that I'd met either in San Francisco or in Houston, because the football community is really small, and so you kind of
it's a large community, right? But it's small as far as everyone knows each other.
Yeah, everybody kind of knows each other. Okay. Yeah, and so I ended up playing arena football for like 6-7 years, and would have guys that I knew that I played with back in Houston or in Scotland or in other places. So it was really cool.
So you've gotten to travel quite a bit.
Yeah, that was my most exciting, favorite thing about the NFL Europe thing was that I never had a passport. My parents had never had a passport, and so we fly out and live in. We lived in Glasgow, Scotland, at the Princess Hotel. That's like part of a Harry Potter style train station. It was crazy, and it was just such a neat experience. And then playing all the football was great. Didn't have any. I always told myself if I had any injuries that if I ever had to have surgery, that I would stop playing. And yes.
Oh, I was just going to quick question. So being in Europe,
yeah,
this has to do directly with that. Do you find it changed your mindset about how you looked at the world or looked at your future?
Oh, absolutely. Because when you're exposed to actually so much other stuff that's totally different than anything you ever experienced.
Different than Arkansas.
Everything's different than Arkansas pretty much. But I love the hogs, man. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I've driven through Arkansas.
Most people do pretty fast. But it was just so cool because they're driving on the other side of the street. You go to a pub and it's loud, and you're trying to talk to a girl and you can't understand a word she's saying because it's loud and because she's speaking with an accent you just really don't. You're just like, what?
Thick.
What?
Thick as that country bacon.
Wow. Yeah. I'm like, no, I can't hear what you're saying. But it was really, really fun. And I'm friends with a lot of people there still, because they're such great people. And I learned to appreciate single malt whiskey while I was there, which was nice. And it takes the edge off after practice, obviously. But it was really interesting because I have, I went back in 98, and there was a girl named Faith that had leukemia that was a fan. And at the end of the 98 season, and I actually, thank God somebody took pictures of this, but I had decided that I gave her like a few games earlier in the season, I'd given her like my gloves after the game, and she'd taken my sweaty, stinky gloves. I'm like, okay, and she was all excited. But then after the final home game of the season, I took off my game jersey and gave it to her, and it was just so cool. And I reconnected through Facebook with her and her mom, which is so awesome because that's the one thing I love about Facebook is you just meet people that you've known and you have no idea where they are.
For all the pros and cons, that's definitely one of the pros.
Yeah.
Being in Europe, that's going to have a major.
Yeah.
It's actually an inflection on how you're going to be thinking about the world and all the things that you're going through. In your mind, in your heart of hearts, that football doesn't last forever because you don't see old people playing football. So that's going to an inevitable time to come. And so not only getting what you can in out of football then, and possibly trying to make a good dollar for your future as well, but
not really.
But that's my point is there's always that hope.
Right.
That maybe you'll get a commercial, or maybe you'll get a spot somewhere, or maybe you'll sign a good contract with somebody. But inevitably, because I raced motocross from, I was racing entirely from like 15 to 27, but I became very, very, like you said, focused from about 19 years to 27 when I retired. And I never became pro,
Right.
but I chased it, and I was right at the edge, and it's just so costly, so expensive. And I got to the point in my head, like, shit, how am I going to go forward in life? Because I know the possibility of me making that kind of money doing this is, and at that time, motocross wasn't what it is now. It is now, and football was for you. So how do you challenge that?
Well, it's interesting because just kind of as an aside, I was just at Mike Ditka's Gridiron Greats Hall of Fame dinner he has in Vegas every year for players that are suffering or older or need some help, and it kind of helps raise money for them to like get hearing aids and things like that. And Howie Long was there this last time. He got the award for being Howie Long. I don't know, but he
accomplishments, all the shit he does.
It was funny because he said, he was talking about how he would probably need to borrow money from his sons because they both play in the NFL now, and because when he played, I swear, he said when he played for the Raiders, he made like $40,000 a year. He's like, the contracts just fairly recently have just gotten out of control. And so I was like, oh, that's true. Because when I was playing in Scotland, I was getting paid $2,000 a week, and I thought that was crazy. I was like, oh, that's awesome because I'm getting paid to play a game. Yeah. And that's kind of the point. You get to a point where you're like, I'm young, I'm having fun, I'm getting paid more than I'm going to working at McDonald's or something.
Do they give you a per diem as well or no?
No. No. But I mean, they paid for the hotel.
Okay.
You had breakfast and dinner.
I was gonna say there's probably a lot of.
For us, there's always food involved.
Yeah, exactly. They're never gonna make you. You're not gonna be starving.
Yeah, you're not gonna starve.
No.
So then once so I played there, and then it was interesting what you were just saying because I went through several agents, and at one point I was on some short list with the Cowboys, and I thought that was cool. I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh well, it's an outside linebacker position. I'm like, okay. And there's like 4 people on the list. And one of them was...
Can you describe outside linebacker? What does that even mean?
That means you're mostly going to be rushing the passer or covering tight ends in the flat.
This is a defensive position.
It's a defensive position, but it's the guy that lines up outside of the defensive end.
Okay.
Because I was so thin still, it was like, you can't really...
You can still move?
You can still move, yeah. But they were like, you need that in that position. And it was interesting because I'm trying to think the sequence of everything. So at one point, I decided I wanted to gain weight. And I was like, you know what? I'm playing in the not Arena League. I was playing NFL Europe, and that was in 96. 97, I had been contacted by the son of the scout for the 49ers that had a team that was the head coach and ironically now head coach of the Redskins, but he was the head coach of the Nashville Cats arena football team, Jay Gruden. And
John related to John Gruden?
Yeah, it's his brother.
Okay.
And John was actually working with the Eagles at the time. But Jay called me up literally and was like, we want you to play arena football. And I'm like, arena football? I'm like, what is that? And I'm like, were you playing a parking lot or something? And he's like, no. And literally, I didn't even realize my fortune at the time. But he was like, what will it take for you to come here and play for us?
That was late 80s?
No, that was...
No, you're 47, so that was going to be mid-90s, right?
Yeah, that was 97.
Yeah,
97.
Mid-90s, that's all right.
And so he literally gave me the whole, what is it going to take for you to come out here? I'm like, nothing, I'm never going to play arena football because I thought I was going back to the NFL because of all these little, you're on this list, you're on that list. Nothing ever happened. So then eventually I had to, eat some crow there and call him back and be like, okay, well, you still want me to play? And he's like, yeah, but I don't have that money to pay you anymore. And I'm like, all right.
Oh, shit.
So
opportunity.
Went to Nashville, but it was good because Nashville was there. And it was so awkward because Nashville was there. I wasn't with the Oilers anymore. They were the Titans now. They were in Nashville. And so I'm playing for the arena football team there, and I go to watch a practice with the Titans, and I know every single guy on the team. They're all coming up to me, walking out to practice, going, DeWitt, what's up?
That's so interesting. That's what we were just talking about. Like, they changed, and you were there during that conversion.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the personnel guy saw me, and he was a little freaked out. He's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what? I'm just watching practice.
Yeah.
But so that was fun, and then went back to Scotland in 98, and during that time, before the 98 season, that's when I really got serious about gaining weight. I'm like, all right, and just for anybody that's wondering, because when I was in high school, I was the smartest guy of my group, Shannon, Brett, and those guys, and they were like, all right, we want to know anything about steroids. We want to know if what's the best one to take. Is it oral, injectable, what's the best way to do it? And so I was like, okay, I'll research it. And so I started researching everything. And I said, well, if you're going to do it, oral is really bad for you because it goes all the way through your system, tears up your kidneys, your liver, right? All that stuff. Yeah. And so injectables is the way to go. And so they were like, okay. And I was like, but you guys realize, I got a bad kidney. I can't do any of that stuff because if I mess up my good kidney, I'm done. And so that was kind of a blessing actually, because I'm like, you know what? I probably would have been super tempted to do it, but I had that wild card. I'm like, sorry, I can't. And so but I'd always struggled to gain weight because of that. And so what people don't understand also is that taking steroids just doesn't make you instantly some huge big muscle man. I mean, you got to put the work in, and the thing that it does is it helps you recover faster. And that's what happens with people that are on steroids. They're able to work out really hard, they recover quickly, and then they start working out again, and so that muscle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But their tendons and stuff don't get stronger, and so they tend to pull a lot of hamstrings and things like that. And there was another player friend of mine,
ACL, MCL type things
all that stuff, all that instability and stuff, because the muscles are just too big and the joints aren't ready. Yeah. It's not a gradual process, so the joints aren't used to it. And another friend of mine that
too much too fast.
Yeah, exactly. And we had another friend of mine that had issues and tried to play for Miami. Tested out better than anybody on the team. Mean Joe Green was the defensive coach there, and he was at the Dick Gridiron Greats event a few years ago. He's a really cool guy. Anyway, so Joe Green told him, he's like, you've tested out better than anybody else on the team. I don't know why you didn't get drafted like super high. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And then all of a sudden he started pulling his hamstring, and kept pulling his quad, pulling his hamstring, he kept pulling muscles, and eventually they had to let him go because he kept hurting himself.
Yeah, it can be.
Then he went up to play in Canada and did awesome. We're talking like 20, 30 tackles in a game. I mean, this guy was a beast. And then he ended up going to Tampa Bay when John Gruden was there, won a Super Bowl with them.
Oh, no, he was there when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, won the Super Bowl, and he ended up playing for him for like...
That was like in 2000?
He played for like 13 years or something.
That was 2003, I think, or 2002.
Yeah, it was a while. Yeah, but it's just interesting because it's one of those things where it's just interesting. So anyway,
yeah, no, it is. It's an interesting dichotomy.
Because you always know a lot of interesting people and people that are willing to do this. Well, and I actually trained with one of Howie Long's trainers, Kevin Florio, up in Redondo Beach, I think it was, and his whole philosophy was so funny. He was like, "You should max out every workout," and I was like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Well, because you're wanting to get bigger, right? So you have to max out." And I'm like, okay. And then he was also a big fan of, you should get on steroids too because everybody else is taking them. I'm like, well, I can't do that. Yeah. And he was like, well, I mean, everybody else is doing it. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Yeah. I can't do it. But anyway, and I was always really strong anyway. So he was always just kind of like, I don't know how you're doing that. I'm like, I don't either. But
it's probably better that you didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so in '98, I wanted to gain weight, and that's when I finally, I don't know why it took me so long, I discovered creatine. I started taking something called, for Max Muscle, they don't even have it anymore, it's called Alpha 1.
I remember that.
And it was basically Hawaiian Punch powder with creatine mixed in because the sugar opens up your cells and gets the creatine in there even faster. I still can't believe this, gained 30 pounds in 6 weeks.
That's what they call your glycogen levels.
Oh, yeah. Right? Oh, yeah. And so I went from like 245, 250 up to 285, 290. It was crazy in 6 weeks. I was squatting 500 pounds for 10, no problem, and it was nuts. Had headaches all the time, but that was fine.
The headaches are from the creatine?
Yeah, well, that was back when you did a loading dose where you do like 7 grams for a week every single day, and I mean your blood pressure is probably through the roof, and my head was just killing me. But
are you familiar with any of the studies correlated with creatine and medium chain triglycerides?
The MCTs?
MCTs, yeah. So there's these studies, there's lengthy studies involving the mixture of MCT and creatine, 5 grams for every 5. I don't know the dosage, something like around 5 grams per every gram of something like that.
Yeah.
You can Google it.
Yeah.
Anyways, with a very, very profound effect on Alzheimer's.
Interesting.
Yes.
I knew the MCT, but I didn't know the creatine.
Actually up to a reversal in some case studies. So yeah, there's something maybe to look in on that maybe. I know this is for a fact that these are very, very heavy
Well, that's
studies.
good because I'm actually taking both of those, so that's good.
Yeah, in fact, Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about that. She does all kinds of study on health and stuff like that. But so you get on creatine, you blow up to 285 295, you say?
Biggest I ever got was 296.
Jesus,
never
so
never
almost
could break 300. I know. That was after eating
And
all day.
did you want to break the 300 mark?
Yeah, just to say I did.
it.
But I mean, when you get up to that point, everything starts stretching. You get weird stretch marks, and you're like,
You can imagine your knees start to go through a bunch of stress.
I never really felt that.
Really, you're
It was
lucky.
funny because I got so big, I ended up going to. Actually, I just remember the sequence of events of what happened. So what happened was that was
It's awesome.
98. And Coach Kreiner, Jim Kreiner, was the head coach of the Scotland team where we won the championship. I played with him in 98, and then in 2000, I think it was, the XFL came out. 2000, 2001. And so I got in touch with Coach Kreiner because he was in charge of the Las Vegas. He was the head coach of the Las Vegas XFL team. And I said, hey, I'd like to play. And so he was like, all right. And so come out, go through camp. And this was the weirdest experience because I only weighed about 250 at that point. And I just had bicep tendon surgery because I'd ruptured my bicep tendon trying to tackle a guy thinking I was superhuman, and that didn't work very well.
No.
And so that was my first surgery, and I didn't quit because I was like, it's not that big a surgery. Whatever. So it's the rationale.
That's the rationale of a young man, yeah.
Yeah, because I was 2000. I was 30.
Keep rocking.
Yeah. So anyway, so I literally would have to go out there and I'd hit the pop-up dummy with my arm to make sure my arm wasn't going to break in half, just to make sure I was building my confidence in it. And it was the cut day. I met some other great guys there. I met Vince Amy. I met Adriano Belli, big Italian guy from Canada that owns a big deli, a huge deli up in Canada. And he and I are good friends still. And so I met all these great guys. It was the final day of camp. Everybody was getting cut, and it was late in the day. And all the guys are congratulating, saying, hey, it looks like you made the cut, blah, blah, blah. And then Coach Kreiner calls me to his room, and he was just like, we just can't. I feel really bad. And he was all crying and stuff. And I was like, you don't have to cry. It's business. I understand. That's fine. I'm like, I'm not happy, but I mean,
yeah.
Vegas is Vegas, and I'll figure it out. So this is another interesting thing that happened. So I go back to Fort Smith to my parents' house.
Back in Arkansas.
I'm married at this time, so my wife's with me.
So did you
I met her when I was in Scotland.
Oh.
And she was dating somebody else at the time.
Is she originally from Europe?
She's from Huntington Beach.
Oh, that's
a whole.
But
whole
she was there
story.
visiting or just on okay.
Yeah. And so I met her in 96.
That's weird.
She actually went with me to Nashville in 97 and then back to Europe with me in Scotland in 98.
Did she graduate Huntington?
Liberty Christian.
Okay. Oh, wow. My sister went there.
There you go. So anyway, so I got released from the Vegas Outlaws, they were called. And,
yeah, exactly.
And so then that's when, because they had,
didn't they have like a 6-shooter in the cartoons?
They had like a skull and a hat with 6 shooters. Or
okay, yeah.
Anyway, so I'm back home with my parents, and God bless my parents and family for guys like this that are chasing some big dream and stuff. I mean, there's so much support from family you don't even know. And so I'm just like, wow, can we come stay for a couple weeks? And they're like, sure. And so go back there, and that's when I got really serious about lifting again, because I was like, they don't think I'm big enough, so I'm going to get as big as I possibly can.
And at this point, you came back down from the, or is this,
I had. That's when I decided.
Okay, this is when you
I'm really going to ramp it up. So I got up to 296, and then I was looking through the different logos of the team. This is the weirdest thing. This kind of goes back to the woo-woo thing a little bit. And I'm looking through all the logos, and I see the logo for the San Francisco Demons, and I'm like, I'm going to play for them. And my wife was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to play for them. I don't know why. I don't know how. I just really think that's a cool logo, and I'm going to play for them. And so literally like a week later, they called me up and wanted me to come out for a tryout, and I hadn't contacted them or anything. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, okay, are you paying for me to fly out there? And they're like, no, you got to fly yourself out here. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. And so they're like, okay. And then somebody else got hurt or something.
So, not to stop you, I don't want to stop your flow, but I'm questioning. Okay, so they ask you to come out and they want you to provide your own way of transportation.
Yeah, they want me to pay for the
And
ticket.
at this point, aren't there some parts of you like, all right, I'm just going to do it because this is my chance, and other parts of you fighting and going, you know what, I don't feel like being taken advantage of and going out and wasting my time and my money.
Well, I had never had to pay to go to any tryout in the past, so I just didn't feel like it. I was like, well, obviously they're not that serious, because I didn't want to fly out there and then turn around and have to come back. So I waited like a week or two more, and they called me back, and they're like, okay, yeah, now we're going to pay for you to come out here.
Oh, okay,
we need
that's
you to come
good.
out. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so I fly out there, and this was the craziest thing. I get to San Francisco, fly in, they take me straight to practice, and I'm like, I have to take a physical or something, right? And they're like, oh, yeah. So we did the physical. Go out there, and it was a Thursday, and they said, we need to get out there and practice. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I don't know any of the plays or anything. And they're like, oh, you'll figure it out. Just get out there. I'm like, all right. So get out there. I'm doing my thing, and I'm not in, because I'm 296 or 285-ish.
How much you weigh right now?
I'm like 250 right now.
Okay, so 45 pounds more.
Yeah, and it was crazy. And I didn't realize, because when it happens kind of gradually, I mean, it's fast, but kind of gradually, you don't really think about it. But I remember when I got up to that size, one of my nephews saw me and was just like, holy crap. And I was like, what? It's just me. And they're like, you're freaking huge.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got there, and I gained all that weight, but I hadn't done any cardio. I had done some cardio, but not enough. And so when I got out to practice, my legs felt like they weighed 5 million pounds. I was like, oh my God, this is rough.
Heavy legs.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And but they were like, it doesn't matter, because we're gonna have you ready. We're flying out. I can't remember if it was the next day, I think. We're flying out to Chicago to play the Chicago whatever they played at Soldier Field, which was kind of cool, the old Soldier Field. And so they're like, we need you to literally sit down with the defensive line coach. You're going to learn all the defense on the flight over there. I'm like, okay. And they're like, just in case, because, the guy in front of you has to get hurt, and, he's probably fine. You'll be fine. I'm like, okay. So it happened so fast. I didn't even have a name on the back of my jersey. In the XFL, they had, like, He Hate Me and all those guys and whatever. And I had nothing. There's no name on the back of my jersey. So we get to Chicago, and once again, I'm in a situation where no one knows who I am. No expectations whatsoever, and I freaking had an awesome game. It was ridiculous. I led the entire team in tackles, and this gives me chills thinking about it, because this stuff really happens. So we're at Soldier Field. It's under the new place is under construction.
Mm-hmm. And what year is this about?
This was like 2000, 2001, whenever the XFL was around.
Okay.
I don't have a name on the back of my jersey. I'm doing so well that I'm on the sideline, and I hear the fans start chanting something, and I don't know what it is. One of the coaches comes over, and he's like, you realize they're chanting for you, right? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you don't have a name on your jersey, so they're chanting Rudy. Like the movie. Oh. And even the coaches started chanting. I was like, are you serious right now? I mean, it was the craziest thing. I'm like, okay, cool.
How awesome is that, though,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it was really cool. And
no expectations.
No, that's the thing.
Got to play in the flow zone.
Yeah.
You flew.
Totally do. And people not thinking that you could learn the defense on the flight and all that kind of stuff. And it was interesting because I did so well. And then that's where people are so interesting. So that happened. Fly back. Everybody's excited because the guy got hurt. And so that's why I had to get in the game. I wasn't going to play. And then that guy blew out his ankle and was out the rest of the season. So they're like, holy crap, but you have to get in there. And I'm like, all right. Anyway, so I get back, and the defensive line pulls me, or the head coach or the D-line coach pulls me aside, and he was like, all right, here's the deal. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, this is the guy that starts, but you just led the team in tackles. He's been here through camp and everything else, and he's really sacrificed, and you just got here. I mean, what do you think I should do? And this is where being a nice guy was the problem, because I'm like, well, I mean, if you want him to start, that's cool. I mean, I'll just play. And so that was a misstep. I should have been like, well, if you want to win, you want me in there. I mean, what do you want to do? But that cockiness thing has never been one of my strong points.
Yeah, you don't seem like the cocky kind.
Yeah, and so
time to be cocky and time to be nice, right?
Exactly. And so anyway, we ended up going to the championship, playing the LA Extreme.
Extreme, yeah.
And then we were playing in the Coliseum. And that was interesting too. So because Coliseum's got so much history, I'm playing in all these historical buildings and stuff, stadiums. And that game, we just got blown out. It was terrible. And I actually got an interception during one of the field goal. I think it was a field goal. the kicker messed up or whatever. So then either the kicker or the holder's like trying to throw a pass and it gets deflected and I intercept it and I'm running and some guy hits me so hard from behind I thought he weighed 500 pounds and I found out it was Rico Mack who I ended up playing arena football with in Buffalo, I think, maybe LA. But I mean, that's just a whole small world thing again. So that was the XFL, and it's coming back next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, Gene Simmons owns.
He owns the
Extreme, right?
No, he owns the Kiss.
Yeah,
it might
LA
be the Kiss. LA Kiss, yeah. They have restaurants, and I mean, he's a super philanthropic.
But he really likes football, though.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy. I read his book. It's interesting.
Yeah, very clean person. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, never did drugs. While everyone thinks that Gene Simmons was a very
I know. That's what I love about him. Whenever I've seen some in the shows, and he's like, no, I just love women.
Yeah.
He's like, that's all he would be.
That was his vice.
Yeah, Shannon Tweed was like, you don't have to say that anymore. But, yeah. But anyway, so that was that football, and then I played arena football more, blew out my shoulder in practice, got my finger caught in a guy's jersey during practice, and he ran by me and tore the labrum in my shoulder and was like, that feels weird. And then I went, because it was on the later part of my career, I would hit people and my arm felt like it was sliding out the back of my shoulder. I'm like, that doesn't feel right, and just was like, I'm fine, and I would just shoot it up with Toradol was a big anti-inflammatory. So they would inject it before games, and then when it got really bad, and this was right after my wife's dad had passed away, so there was a lot of trauma and drama and all that
family stuff.
But towards the end, they would put 2 shots. They would do 1 shot of Toradol, and then they would puncture the capsule itself, and literally I could feel the needle grinding on the top of my humerus in the joint, and I was just like, and then they would load me up with Ultram, pain pills and stuff, and I just go out there and be all caffeinated up and whatever, and just going like crazy, and I wouldn't feel anything until a day or 2 later, and then I was just like, oh my God, I'm dying. I can't.
And then the progressive rebuild state's probably not even very progressive. It's probably very latent.
It's all damage at that point. And then so I did that for 6 weeks, and then finally did an MRI, and they were like, dude, you literally, this is like a career-ending injury.
Bone on bone type of thing? Or?
Nah, just the labrum is the suction cup that holds your arm in there, and if it gets torn, if you break a seal on a suction cup, your arm's just kind of dangling there.
Just kind of wants to pop out all the time.
Yeah, and so I have really loose shoulders, or I used to have really loose shoulders anyway. So I went in and had the guy that did Tom Brady's knee surgery, Neil Elatrosh, years ago, he did my shoulder surgery, and it was interesting because, all credit to Dr. Elatrosh, awesome guy. He's still involved with the NFL and stuff, but he literally, one of his things he told me was, well, the shoulder's not a weight-bearing joint, so you shouldn't lift weights. And I was like, you realize I play football, right? I'm like, well, I was like, don't give me useless information. That's not going to help me. So anyway, and at one point in there, I went to pharmacy school too for a year, which was interesting. Well, 2 different semesters because my sister was a pharmacist. And then I decided I didn't want to go that route because I was way more into the gross anatomy. I wanted to be able to dissect stuff, see how that stuff was put together.
So this is a transitional state where you're finally realizing, okay, I have this professional career,
right?
And it's taking a toll on me physically. Mentally, it's probably starting to take a toll on you because...
Oh, yeah. Because I was scared to death because I was like, I don't know what else to do. I can't fill out a resume and say I play football. I'm like, seriously? What? They're going to be, that's nice. What other skills do you have? And be like, I can hit you really hard.
But you had innate smarts from school, so then now you follow... You didn't, like you said, you didn't want to get in the pharmaceutical or pharmacy type thing, so then you started... Did you realize this, being a doctor, going to school to become a doctor was something imminent, or is it just something you stumbled upon?
Well, it's one of those things where I was always told that because I had big hands and was a big guy, that I was either going to be an orthopedic surgeon or I could be like a physical therapist, chiropractor, or something like that. In Arkansas, I'd never heard of what a chiropractor was, and so when I was in San Francisco with the XFL. I met their chiropractor, and he worked on me, and he was also Barry Bond's chiropractor at the time, and he said he was scared to adjust him because he was like, I don't know if it would cover it if I hurt him because he makes like $6 gazillion a year, and
and is this where he was cracking him deep?
Yeah, and so anyway. So I talked to him, and then every single team I played for had a team chiropractor that would come in and adjust us before games and stuff, or before practice or whatever. And so I was like, what do you have to do for that? And they were like, well, you have to like biology, be a strong guy is good. And I'm like, all right. And so then once again, between seasons, I'm back in Fort Smith with my parents, with my wife, saying, what's the next phase after I'm done with football? researched a bunch of different chiropractic schools, and wanted to be out here because her family's in Orange County, and so I ended up going to.
So this is how you got transplanted.
Yeah. So then we ended up going to Southern California University of Health Sciences in Whittier, and it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. I loved all the classes, and I think one of my superpowers, they like to say that sometimes for people. One of the things I'm really good at is in school, I can just kind of tell when I'm in a lecture or something what's important and what's not. So I'll sit there and write down all the important stuff, and then I'll just kind of ignore the other stuff. And then I'll go for the test, and I'll finish in like 5 minutes. And people are like, how'd you do that? I'm like, well, if you listen to what they're saying during class, it's pretty obvious what's going to be on the test. So anyway, I did really well.
Only obvious for those who think about it, though.
Yeah.
Because the people who don't put the mindset to thinking about it in that way, it's not so obvious.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
obvious
usually,
that they screw up at the end.
Right, and you don't know until after the first test. That's when you know, okay, yeah. Because I used to have professors in pharmacy school that the only thing they would have on the test would be little facts that were listed underneath images in the textbook, like in the tiny font.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's sneaky. That's sneaky, dude. But you just got to figure it out.
They wanted people to be thorough.
Yeah,
Here's
exactly.
a book, read all the way through it, even the little text under the pictures.
Exactly.
So this fast forwards you. Now, what year around is this? In that 2005, 6?
2000. I'd already said I was going to sign up and go to school. I was playing arena football in Vegas in 2003-ish. Blew out my ankle on the entire inner ligaments, the deltoid ligaments on the inside got blown out. And I felt so bad because evidently everybody knew who I was, because they were like, the guy that hurt me was like, dude, are you all right? And I'm like, no, it's pretty bad. And they're like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, a lot of pops going on. That's never good.
Yeah.
And I couldn't feel anything, but I was like, yeah, that's probably not good. And so literally I was done and started my whole first year at chiro school with a big boot on my foot.
So how long did you have to go to chiro school for?
It's a 5-year program compressed into 3.5 years.
Okay.
No breaks, no summers, no nothing.
Just keep going. I went to USC Business. I got invited to do a minority business school over there it was a 18-week course. It was 2 years of business school crammed into 18 weeks.
But that's good, though. If you can be disciplined and do it.
And I had to drive from Orange County to SC 2 times a week, which wasn't bad, or 3 times a week. But, nevertheless, it's like it was one of those things where I got to I was at the end of my motocross career,
right? And
just knowing that it wasn't going to happen. The guys are just going way too fast, and the support that people had, and I just couldn't keep doing it. I was trying to keep up. It was so costly. And then finally I said, you know what? I got to get on with other parts of my life. So I wanted to figure just go to business school, because business is broad. And that's what I did. So you get to the point where you're going to school. Now, anytime during the school, since you when you were raised in Arkansas, you never heard of chiropractic.
Yeah.
The word woo-woo keeps coming up. I hear this thing, woo-woo.
Right.
Okay? Or just kind of like maybe I've heard the term fake doctor. I've heard the term all these kind of things. And a lot of people don't believe in chiropractic. And I preach it, but I don't preach it about all chiropractic doctors.
Right. Just like all medical doctors. There's some good ones and bad ones.
For sure. But I think that just the mentality that you're going to be able to crack some bones and then people are going to over time get better. People have a hard time even understanding that. And sometimes I come in and you see me and I'm a wreck. Yeah. I'm sideways. I can't. I have so much pain, and those are very few. They are more often when I could become dehydrated.
Oh yeah.
And I don't take care of my body with plenty of water and sleep schedules.
Yeah.
Or if I sleep in a funky position with the dog at the end of the bed and I'm dehydrated and I'm not taking care of my body, it just goes to hell. So when I see Dr. DeWitt or Dr. Bergman, they give me these chiropractic adjustments, and I mean, literally, I just can feel rejuvenated. I come out, my body's straight. I'm not walking at an angle anymore. And then I feel myself progressively getting better at like riding my BMX bike or just my workload. And I do jujitsu. I've started back up in my jujitsu schedule again because I'm feeling more rejuvenated again. And this is a direct correlation with, again, good diet, getting better sleep, drinking lots of water, and my chiropractic schedule. And
that's what's funny that people need to realize. It's not a belief system, and it's just that you don't see it on TV like you do all the other, because there's not the money to make it all promoted to the world. But you have to keep in mind, every single professional team that I ever played for had a chiropractor in the locker room adjusting guys right before the game, because that gets you a better connection. You get more muscle fibers connected to the nerves, and so you're going to have better reaction times. And they've done all kinds of research on that. So
Yeah.
it definitely works.
I know for a fact it works for me. I could say, well, they could say, well, it's a placebo. No, it's not. People know when I'm hurt, and then they see me 2 days later and go, bro, you're okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't take any medications. I try to keep the pain there so that I know that it's apparent.
Mm-hmm.
So this gets me to my next question to you. So
Yes.
now you graduate. I
graduated.
And you moved out here? Or you're already out here?
I was already out here.
Whittier, but
Well,
you were living
I was going to school there. We were living in Huntington Harbor.
So you've been in Huntington for a while.
Since 97.
So this is awesome. So get to that point and you graduate, and then now what? Now do you go to work for a chiropractor, or?
Before I graduated, my last year there, I went up and down the coast interviewing chiropractors, asking them, okay, what technique do you use? Can I get your business card? Any extra material, brochures, things you hand out? What's your advice on a new graduate? Would you do workers' comp? Would you do PI type stuff? What all would you do? And I collected that all into a book. It was like 100 different chiropractors from San Diego up to San Luis Obispo.
And there's several different styles of chiropractic?
Oh, there's hundreds of different techniques.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this could be very, very...
Yeah. And I wish I could I'll find that someday because I got to turn it into its own little...
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on here.
Yeah, because it's interesting. So anyway, and during that time, I went by Graham Chiropractic and saw Dr. Bergman.
Oh, okay.
And we sat in on, my wife and I sat in on Dr. Bergman's talk on vaccines, which is always very entertaining. And
Yes.
and had x-rays taken and all that. And then I remember writing down something about, this is really interesting because I literally wrote down in my book, he is extremely passionate. Whoever ends up doing the marketing for this guy is going to be super successful. And probably 4 or 5 years later, it was me. So it was really scary.
You started doing the marketing for him?
Yeah. I set up, I would do all the YouTube videos. I do all that stuff.
Oh my goodness. See, wow. This just answers so many different questions. That's, okay. Now I got bells ringing in my head and everything because of this, because this enlightened me to a whole new aspect of how you were involved with this. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And it's interesting too.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. So anyway, one of the things about chiropractic college, I remember sitting after doing all that, talking to all these docs, sitting during the graduation ceremony and whatnot, and being completely freaked out and scared to death because there were not any salary jobs at all at the time. It was all like, and Dr. Bergman started out this way too. He was like, I started out and I got 50% of whatever I brought in. I got to keep 50% of it. And he had like 2 kids at the time, and I'm like, holy crap. And so here I am. I'm like, there's no salary jobs. I'm like, what am I going to do? There was a salary job up in Washington or something, but all you were going to be doing was spinal screenings and this kind of stuff, which is fine. I'm just paying your dues. You got to do what you got to do. But I ended up deciding and I just found my journal from 2006 when all this was going on. So I was reading through that. It's interesting, the whole mentality. So I'm like, okay, we need to figure out where we're going to go and what's the best option for success. So we moved down to Carlsbad, where we knew no one. And I rented a room from Dr. Larry Jacobs, who, when I went in there, there was no x-ray. There was, they had a subluxation station thing. They had 2 massage chairs. I can't even remember. I think my rent was free the first month, maybe. And then it went up after that. And it was such a learning experience because it was right around 2007, 2008 when the real estate bubble was happening.
Geez,
and so I was still able to unfortunately was able to get a whole bunch of credit to do a bunch of marketing stuff because I thought, if I have all this money for marketing, I'll do a lot of marketing and I'm guaranteed success. No.
Okay.
And so anyway, I got one patient to sign up for a care plan. It was like $2,000, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and was like, holy mackerel, this is going to be awesome. And that was the one and only patient I ever got down there.
Really?
And so we were living down there. The lady that we were renting a place from decided she was moving back from Texas, so we had to leave. And that's when things got really real, and I was like, is the chiropractic thing going to work for me? Am I going to go back to pharmacy school? Am I going to try to play football again just to buy me some time? I mean, I literally ended up calling Coach Gruden at one point. I think this must have been this was like
Jay Gruden.
Jay Gruden. This was like 8 years ago before I started working with Dr. Bergman. And I called him and asked him if I could play again. And he was like, "You're too old." And I'm like, "Dude, you played last year." And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm a quarterback. It's totally different." And I'm like, So that was a blessing too, though, because I'm like, all right, eventually you just got to cut that loose and be like, that's not an option anymore. You got to figure something else out. And so then I went and worked with another chiropractor for a very brief stint in Newport. And that was a bad experience too.
Now, why is it a bad experience?
Well, because when I went in there, I said, the only way I can work here is I have to be guaranteed to make this, I can't even remember what it was, this certain amount of money every month. And he's like, okay, no paperwork, no handshake, no nothing. And then obviously that didn't happen. And he's like, I never said that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I left there and went to a guy at Next Level Wellness Center in Irvine. And I had actually worked out at Next Level Fitness and when I was playing football still. And so he had implied that he didn't think I could go to chiropractic college because he didn't think I was smart enough to my wife, which I thought was funny. So I ended up doing that, and he's like, "Oh, it's kind of like the whole Legally Blonde thing." I'm like, "What? Like it's hard?" I'm like, "Okay." So anyway, I started working with him for a while and doing a lot of soft tissue work, active release technique, which just destroys your thumbs. But then I met Lee Steinberg, the big sports agent that was on Jerry Maguire. It's based on his story.
Okay.
And a bunch of other really interesting people, and then ended up going to, I had patients that I'd referred to Dr. Bergman, and after I graduated, I'd always been touching base every now and then with Dr. Bergman, being like, you need an associate yet? You need an associate yet? He's like, no, we're all good, because what I didn't realize is the practice management company that he was working with didn't encourage you to have associates. And so he was doing it all by himself. And finally, I had one of the patients that I'd referred to him called me up and said, I think you should call him up, because it's literally like a 3-hour wait to see him. Yeah. I mean, it's gotten pretty ridiculous. Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I called him up, and I ended up signing my contract on his birthday in 2011. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And as soon as I got there, I'm like, okay, you've got 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. You don't even have your channel monetized. Some other person had tried to monetize it and it had been blocked. And so I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. So I said, okay, we need to figure out how to monetize this. We need to figure out how to optimize all these videos. We need to figure out other online sources of income so you don't have to work so hard. And he's like, what's online income? What are you talking about? And I was like, it's like passive income. He's like, what does that mean? I don't understand. Because he is general contractor. He's all about, you exchange your time for money. This is how you do it. And so I monetized the YouTube channel. We set up a membership site where you could watch the videos, but then you could also download the handouts from the talks. You could have email contact with him.
You smart, Doc. You smart.
Yeah. And so, I just saw he had so much awesome information out there. It just wasn't getting out there.
He didn't have the time to.
Oh gosh, no. When you're doing those talks, he was creating all those from scratch. I mean, that is a 24/7 research and putting slides together and all that. Yeah, he didn't have time for any of that. And so, set up the membership site, and then he would do consult. He would just talk to patients on the phone. They'd call him up and he'd talk to them and give them answers stuff. I'm like, most people would probably charge for that. And he's like, oh, really? And he's like, how much do you think we should charge? And I was like, I don't know. Let's start with $100 to talk to you for an hour. And he's like, you think they'll pay that? They're not going to pay that. I'm like, yeah, they might. And so we started with that, and now fast forward, 3-4 years, they pay $1,000 for an hour of his time.
Wow.
$500 to talk to him for 30 minutes. And then he has that. He only works Monday through Thursday now, and then starting next year, it's going to be Monday through Wednesday that he's going to be in the office, and he's going to be doing all these other speaking engagements and stuff, which is great. But I mean,
it's taken off.
It's really taken off, and the membership site was great, and he's taken that a different route because his son was going to go to chiropractic college, went to chiropractic college a few times, but then decided he wanted to be the media guy, and so he came in and kind of took over that aspect, which was fine with me because I was trying to do all the chiropractic stuff, seeing 100 people a day myself, and then doing all the video editing and stuff at home, and it just got really exhausting. So then that's when I started creating my own stuff, and I'm like, okay, let's do the Dr. John DeWitt site, let's do the Relax to Clarity site, which is a webinar.
Relax to what is it?
Relax to Clarity.
E-Clarity?
Relax to Clarity.
Oh, Relax to Clarity.
Yes.
I like that.
And because that's Dr. Bates' big philosophy is all about relaxing to be able to see better. And so there's like a 2.5-hour long free webinar that you can watch.
Yeah, that's probably why I can't see shit.
Exactly. And then and then I did the the concussionclass.com. That's a free webinar on concussions and what causes them, what you can do about them. And then I set up or created different supplements for vision and also supplements for concussions, and have written 8 books, I think, now. And that was another thing with
8?
Yeah. With Dr. Bergman, he had all those books in his head, but he hadn't written them down yet. And so it was kind of neat because I was a big Pat Flynn fan, and so I'm listening to Pat Flynn down in San Diego. He's a big internet marketer guy, and he was talking about ebooks and stuff like that. I'm kind of like, okay. And so I came out with some stuff that was kind of whatever, but that's when I was like, okay, Dr. Bergman, you need to get your talks that you've done on blood pressure, send them to this website. They'll transcribe it for you, and that's going to be the meat of your book. And that way you can just kind of pick and choose what you want to put in there, add some extra stuff. We got an illustrator from, it used to be called Odesk, but now it's Upworks. And he was actually a nurse too.
The guy's name is from Upworks.
No, he's one of the freelancers on Upworks. Yeah.
Okay.
And so he did all these.
I don't even know what Upworks is. So.
It's just it's a great place if you need somebody to do some any kind of work. It can be video work. It can be commercial. It can be. I mean, unfortunately, you can even pay for testimonials.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but
well,
and that's kind of lame. But people do what they got to do. But we had them set up the illustrations for this book. Then he had it written. We had somebody else transcribe it into Spanish. So then we have it in the blood pressure books in English and Spanish. But we started with the marketing book that had links to other videos, which is great. And I don't even think you can get that online because he just hands that out at the office occasionally. And then he did an arthritis book, How to Reverse Arthritis Naturally.
Yeah. Then
went down and I met with Ryan Dice with Digital Marketer and created the arthritis reversal system, which was 3 manuals, a series of video, like a video course, and then that sent him in to do the consultations and that kind of stuff. And then we even had something called, what was it called? RecipeRx.com, and that's not around anymore, but it was really interesting too because I was just trying to think of anything I could think of to help get more passive income.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a software. We partnered up with a company in India that had all the information you could want on different prescription medications. But what it did was you could type in the medication that you were taking, and it would tell you different foods that you could eat that would give you the same effect.
Oh, shit.
And so it was.
Let me just say it got outlawed somehow?
I mean, it was huge.
Why is it not around anymore?
Well, because it was just one of like 500 million other things that we were trying to do, and so it just never really took off. But
it was a book completed, or?
Oh yeah, it was functional and stuff.
Just not being printed in print anymore.
No, it wasn't print. It was software.
Software, just software.
Software as a service, SaaS they call it.
Oh.
And so you just would log in and type it in and figure out what you wanted and what you could do instead. And I'm sure that probably didn't work out for a reason because I'm sure there's all kinds of legal issues that would have come about. But so maybe that's why that didn't fall through. But we needed. For something like that, it needs to be have a bunch of really cool pictures of food and recipes, and we just didn't have time for all that. But it was a good idea. And then what else? And then I was like, hey, one of our patients does celebrity cruises for I can't remember who it was. One of the ladies that got in trouble, the Southern
the lady who said
with the white hair.
Some racist comments.
Yeah, she said some racist. He did cruises for her, and I was like, I wonder if we could do a cruise. And so Dr. B was like, you think people go on a cruise? I'm like, well, they're doing all the other stuff. Why not?
Yeah,
and so
they will.
we go on the first cruise, and it was funny because the first cruise we went on, I think we had 35 people or so that went on the cruise, and we would sit down in the bottom of the boat, no windows or anything, which was a horrible situation. And it was so dark, and we'd sit in there, and I would videotape every single talk, and then I would save it onto a flash drive and then hand it to them at the end so they'd all have the videos. And then we turn that in, and then they would get a booklet for the cruises. And now he's doing, I think, the next cruise, he's done 6 or 7 cruises.
How long are the cruises for?
They were a week.
No shit.
Yeah, we did one cruise up to Alaska. That was pretty awesome.
Me and Lauren should sign up.
Yeah,
because we're looking to do
awesome.
A cruise, and we just.
The next one actually is a smaller ship, so it should be a little more intimate. I think I don't know. There's stuff at the office.
It's
really
That's
cool.
Interesting.
But yeah, so we did all that, and it was great. And so now, I mean, fast forward a few years, and there's over 450,000 subscribers, I think, on the YouTube channel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And so I am assuming that the ad income probably from that alone is well over, $8,000-9,000 a month just from that. You literally don't do anything. You just do your video.
That's what I need to learn, because I'm not monetizing anything.
Yeah.
On any of my channels, because I'm just trying to build the brand. So it's just like
I might as well make some money to help build the brand too.
100%.
And Blog Talk Radio is another really good thing you should look into. That's what he does.
You're bringing light to a whole new aspect of what I know this is part of my podcast. It's just, like you said, you have to do it. I have my other business, and we'll go back here. I'll show you what I do. I make soap and
cool.
And then, but you're bringing a part of your business that it just kind of shines everything what I need to do with this part of my company or whatever I'm doing here with the podcast. It's I do this because it's just I get off on it.
Right.
This is like a thing that I've gotten into because I want to perfect it.
Right.
A good conversation is, I think, these long form podcasts are something that is the opposite of what has been the trend.
Right.
Everything's
like 10 minutes, go.
Or 59 seconds.
Right.
Instagram is super fast. Now everyone's doing more of the live stuff and more live streaming. But I think the long form podcast that can be unedited and then released, and then from there excerpts, because there's a lot of good little portions of the talk
that
are consumable, because trying to sit down and consume an 8-hour or 3-hour podcast or whatever it's a feat. But if I release it, that's why I've been doing little chunks to make it released into these little areas where it's a little bit more consumable, and then you can pick and choose. You might not want to have anything to do with football, but you start talking about brain injury or start talking about chiropractic or these things, and then it attaches somebody's imagination and their attention. However, some of these conversations are hard to get into unless you have to go down some rabbit holes.
Right.
Because like you said earlier, you're like, the chain of events.
Right.
This conversation released something that you probably haven't thought about in a long time. And it's kind of good to, like I said, it's that form to capture it and then post it. And then you have this related form of something that, with every aging year, we lose more and more of that memory, that recollection of things that happen. So,
very
come back on again, and we'll talk more biology and physiology and all that kind of stuff. And it's a good introductory to for me to learn who you are.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I know he's a football player, I know he's a badass. But I wanted to, where were you coming from? I knew you're very humble, and it seemed like you had Southern roots. Your persona kind of had that vibe, and I really like that. That's why I keep coming to you. And I have to be honest, I'll say it on the radio. Every time I go to see Dr. DeWitt, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to hurt me today. And I mean that in the best of ways. He's a good chiropractor. That's why I keep seeing him. But sometimes I feel that because I come from that fighting MMA, jiu-jitsu background, I was like, this guy needs a little extra. And last time I was like, can you please be sweet with me? And the last adjustment was the best adjustment I've gotten from you. You still put it on because he's big. But it was just like, now I feel like I've been rejuvenated. I got to come see you again soon.
You should.
When are you normally down there?
Monday through Thursday, but I'm there all week next week.
Graham Chiropractic on Beach Boulevard.
It's not Graham Chiropractic.
Jesus.
What's wrong with you? You went old school. Wow, talk about senior.
Well, because you talked about Graham going there, and it's like, wow, that just took me all the way. Sorry, this is Bergman. Is it Bergman Family Chiropractic?
Yep.
And then look up Dr. John DeWitt. He's there, like you said, all the time, and all the ladies there are really awesome. And does Dr. Mike still work over there?
No, he's down Carlsbad-ish.
Young Dr. Mike, shout out to you. He's a really nice guy, and I wish you the best of luck out there in whatever your endeavors are. It's the Topsnap podcast. You can see me on Instagram at username is Jay. That's USERNAMEISJAY. Dr. DeWitt, do you have a Instagram?
I do.
Do people want to come and see all your awesome pictures?
Of course they do.
Awesome.
But I think it's Dr. John DeWitt. But
yeah, and the website you said earlier was
drjohndewitt.com.
Dr. John DeWitt, and that's DEWITT.
Yep. .com. Yeah, it's Dr. John DeWitt is the
Instagram.
Yep.
Okay, and then hashtag Get Straight, hashtag Bergman Chiropractic, hashtag Dr. John DeWitt. All right, you guys, thank you. Have a blessed day out there. Go out there and smash it and kill it. And like always, if you did not like what you heard here,
tough,
and change the channel. All right, guys, love you. Out. Talk to you guys later. Thank you.
You bet.
Awesome, you guys.
Absolutely. Jeez, I know. I'm like, I don't know, what time is it? Where am I?